Serafina. Just the name leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. We were supposed to be at 6 years. 6 goddamn years I poured into that relationship, thinking we were building something real, something lasting. Now? It feels like I was living in a meticulously crafted lie, and she was the architect of it all. It started subtly. Shifts in her schedule, things she couldn't explain. Evening client meetings that stretched on for hours. Errands that somehow morphed into entire afternoons vanished. The scent of a different cologne clinging to her clothes. At first, I chalked it up to work. Stress. I wanted to trust her. God, how I wanted to. But the little things kept piling up, forming a mountain of doubt that threatened to suffocate me. She started dressing differently. More provocative. Heels for a coffee meeting? Full makeup just to run to the store? It wasn't Serafina. Not the Serafina I thought I knew anyway. And her phone. That damn phone became an extension of her hand. It was always there, clutched tight, the screen carefully angled away from my prying eyes. It used to sit face up on the table when we ate, a symbol of our open communication. Now, it was a guarded secret, a constant reminder of the chasm that was growing between us. I wasn't born yesterday. I'd seen enough movies, heard enough stories from friends who'd been blindsided. I knew the signs, but I was scared to admit it, scared to confront the possibility that the woman I loved, the woman I'd built a life with, was capable of betraying me so completely. One night, I decided to test the waters. Casual, innocent. "How was your day, babe? What did the client want?" Her response was vague, dismissive. She couldn't meet my eyes. She changed the subject so quickly it gave me whiplash. That's when the knot in my stomach tightened. That's when I knew, deep down, that my worst fears were about to be confirmed. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed. A pathetic, paranoid shadow of my former self. I started watching her, analyzing her every move, dissecting her every word. She'd leave the house at odd hours, claiming to work at a cafe, but she wouldn't take her laptop. Her social media became a carefully curated highlight reel of single-woman freedom, selfies with cryptic captions about finding herself, embracing life, and finally, being happy. The knife twisted a little deeper with each post. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Serafina left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally. I was just moving it so I could start making dinner. But then, a notification popped up. A message from some guy named Kyle. My heart hammered against my ribs. I just knew, that whatever was on that screen would shatter the illusion of my marriage. I hesitated for a split second, a desperate plea for ignorance warring with the gnawing need for truth. Truth won. I opened the message. It was an iMessage. She had it synced with her laptop. "Last night was amazing," Kyle had written. Simple, direct, devastating. My vision blurred. I felt a cold, sickening wave wash over me. I clicked on the thread. Months of messages flooded the screen. They talked about everything. How they met at a yoga class. Seriously? Their secret rendezvous? And then, the words that sealed my fate. "I'm planning to leave Liam when the time is right." I wasn't just heartbroken, I was enraged. Betrayed. Humiliated. I could feel my blood boiling, every cell in my body screaming for vengeance. But I tamped it down, swallowed the rage, and focused. This wasn't the time for a confrontation. This was the time for a plan. I meticulously documented everything. I forwarded the messages to myself, screenshotted every damning piece of evidence, creating a digital dossier of her infidelity. I wasn't going to give her any room to weasel out of it. That night, I barely slept. Images of Serafina and Kyle together flashed through my mind, each one a fresh wound. But amidst the pain and anger, a strange sense of clarity began to emerge. I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I found one online, a no-nonsense woman named Amanda who specialized in divorce cases. I poured out my story, showed her the evidence. She listened intently, her expression grim. "This is good," she said finally, referring to the messages. "This is solid proof of infidelity. It will make things much easier." Easier? I doubted anything about this process would be easy. We talked about my options. Without a prenup, things could get messy. Serafina would likely try to bleed me dry. "She'll come after everything," Amanda warned. "The house, the car, your savings, even your retirement. Be prepared for a fight." I knew she was right. Serafina wasn't going to let me go without a battle. She was too entitled, too greedy. "I'm ready," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not letting her take everything I've worked for." We discussed strategy, timelines, and the likely costs. It was going to be expensive, both emotionally and financially. But I was willing to pay the price to get rid of Serafina and reclaim my life. Leaving Amanda's office, I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. The storm was coming, and I knew it was going to be brutal. But I was prepared. I had my evidence, my lawyer, and a burning desire to see justice served. Serafina had made a grave mistake. She underestimated me, and she was about to pay the price. That night, I waited for Serafina to come home. I sat in the living room, the lights off, the silence broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock. I felt numb, detached, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. When she finally walked through the door, I could smell the cheap perfume clinging to her clothes, the faint scent of Kyle. It was like a slap in the face. She smiled, a practiced, insincere smile. "Hey, honey." Long day. I didn't respond. I just stood up, walked over to the coffee table, and placed her laptop in front of her. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" "Open it," I said, my voice flat. She hesitated, then slowly opened the laptop. Her eyes scanned the screen, and the color drained from her face as she saw the iMessage thread. What is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just looked at her, my eyes filled with a cold, hard anger. "So, when were you planning on telling me?" She froze. For a split second, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Then, she tried to deny it. "Liam, I don't know what you're talking about. These messages." "Don't insult my intelligence, Serafina," the first said, cutting her off. "I have everything. Every message, every date, every detail of your little affair." "There's no denying it." Her denial crumbled. She switched tactics, trying to justify her actions. "Liam, you haven't been paying attention to me. You're always working. You never make me feel appreciated." "This isn't about me," I said, my voice rising. "This is about you. You cheated on me, Serafina. You lied to me. You betrayed everything we had. And now, it's over." "Over?" she repeated, her voice laced with panic. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we're done," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want a divorce." Her eyes widened. She started to cry. Fake, crocodile tears. "Liam, please. Don't do this. We can work it out. I'll stop seeing Kyle. I promise." "It's too late," I said, turning away. "I'm done with the lies, the cheating, the manipulation. I'm done with you." I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, sobbing. I didn't look back. I knew that this was the beginning of a long and bitter battle, but I was ready. Serafina had declared war, and I was going to fight back with everything I had. My life, my future, was on the line. The divorce process was a nightmare. Serafina wasn't going to let me walk away easily. She lawyered up, hiring a shark of an attorney who specialized in high-asset divorces. She came after everything. Half my savings, the house, the car, even a portion of my retirement account. Her argument was that she had sacrificed so much for our marriage. She claimed she had supported me emotionally while I built my career, implying that she was entitled to a share of my success. The audacity was breathtaking. Her lawyer used every trick in the book to drag things out, hoping to wear me down and force me to settle. There were endless depositions, document requests, and court hearings. Serafina played the victim at every turn, painting me as a cold, uncaring husband who had neglected her needs. At one point, she even claimed she needed more money because she was emotionally devastated by the divorce and needed therapy to cope. I almost choked. She was the one who had cheated, who had destroyed our marriage, and now she was trying to extort me for her own mistakes. My lawyer, Amanda, was a rock. She kept me focused, reminding me that we had the evidence to prove Serafina's infidelity and undermine her claims. She fought tirelessly on my behalf, countering every one of Serafina's lawyer's moves. But the process was draining. The constant stress, the endless paperwork, the constant reminders of Serafina's betrayal, it all took a toll. I lost weight, I couldn't sleep, and I felt like I was living in a perpetual state of anxiety. Amanda told me I had a good chance of keeping most of what I had worked for if we took it to court. But after months of back and forth, I was exhausted. I just wanted it to be over. So, I made a choice. I let her have it. I agreed to a settlement that gave Serafina a significant portion of my assets. It wasn't fair, but it was worth it to be done with her. I signed the papers, feeling a mixture of relief and resentment. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Sure, I was broke, but I was free. Free from Serafina. Free from the lies. Free from the constant drama. At the time, I had no idea just how much karma was going to come back around. Serafina thought she had won, that she had gotten away with it. But she was wrong. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, and her day of reckoning was coming. After the divorce, my life boiled down to two things: work and survival. Starting over from scratch wasn't just some cliché for me. It was my stark, unyielding reality. I was 35 years old, living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town, surrounded by furniture I'd either salvaged from thrift stores or literally dragged in from the curb. My once comfortable life, complete with a house, a car, and a sense of security, was gone, swallowed up by Serafina's greed and my desire to be free of her. But honestly, I was too damn determined to dwell on it. The apartment wasn't much. Scuffed linoleum floors, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, and neighbors who thought 2am karaoke sessions were a perfectly reasonable activity. My living room consisted of a futon I found on Craigslist that smelled faintly of mildew, and a TV that only worked if you hit it on the side just right. The walls were bare, the fridge was mostly empty. But it was mine. No Serafina, no Kyle, no constant reminders of how badly I'd been screwed over. That alone made it worth it. I threw myself into my work. My job as an IT consultant wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and I was good at it. I picked up every extra shift I could, taking on freelance gigs in my free time, which basically ceased to exist. Weekdays blurred into weekends, and I rarely took a day off. Sleep became optional. It wasn't the healthiest way to live, but I had a goal: rebuild my savings and prove to myself that I could thrive without Serafina or anyone else. The first few months were brutal. My bank account was laughable, and I was constantly exhausted. I'd sit down after a 12-hour day, stare at the pathetic pile of bills on my coffee table, if you could call the wobbly milk crate that, and wonder how the hell I'd gotten here. Doubt gnawed at me, whispering that I'd made a mistake, that I should have fought harder, that I was doomed to live out my days in this depressing little box. But then I'd remind myself I was free. No more Serafina telling me I wasn't good enough. No more pretending everything was fine while she lived a double life. That thought alone kept me going, fueled my relentless drive. One thing I realized quickly was how little I actually needed. When you're stripped down to the basics, you figure out what's really important. I didn't need fancy clothes or a new car or a perfectly decorated apartment. I needed a roof over my head, food on the table, and the damn drive to keep moving forward. It was almost liberating to let go of all the material crap Serafina had obsessed over. Of course, social media didn't make it easy. Serafina and Kyle were living it up, or at least that's what they wanted everyone to think. Photos of them lounging by the pool at my house, damn her, smiling next to my car bastard, acting like their relationship was #couple goals popped up in my feed every other day. I could have blocked her. But part of me wanted to see how it all played out. I knew it wouldn't last. People like Serafina and Kyle were built to self-destruct. Sure enough, cracks started to show. Mutual friends told me Kyle wasn't exactly the responsible, loving guy Serafina had made him out to be. He quit his gym job and was spending most of his time partying and burning through Serafina's money. Apparently, she was footing the bill for everything, groceries, utilities, even his bar tabs. The house she'd fought so hard for was already falling apart because neither of them could be bothered to maintain it. The car? Kyle crashed it into a mailbox within 6 months. I'll admit, hearing about their downfall gave me a little satisfaction. Okay, maybe more than a little, but I didn't dwell on it for too long. I had my own life to focus on, and for the first time in years, I was starting to see progress. One of the first big milestones was paying off my debts. Between the divorce and Serafina draining our joint accounts, I'd been left with a mountain of credit card bills and a couple of lingering loans. It took months of scrimping and saving, but one by one, I knocked them out. The day I paid off the last one, I celebrated with a cheap frozen pizza and a 6-hour binge of my favorite show. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt damn good. Next came rebuilding my savings. I set up a strict budget, cutting out anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. No eating out, no impulse buys, no splurging on things I didn't need. I became the king of meal prepping, eating the same rotation of chicken, rice, and veggies week after week. It wasn't exciting, but it worked. Slowly but surely, my bank account started to grow. Around this time, I also started taking better care of myself. The divorce had taken a toll on my mental and physical health, and I was tired of feeling like crap all the time. I joined a local gym, not Kyle's, obviously, and started working out a few times a week. It wasn't about getting revenge or looking better than Kyle, okay, maybe a little. It was about feeling stronger and more confident in myself. The endorphins helped clear my head and ease the anxiety that still lingered. Work was another area where I saw huge growth. All those extra shifts and freelance gigs paid off, not just financially but professionally. I built up a solid reputation in my field, and after about a year, I landed a promotion. The pay bump wasn't life-changing, but it was a step in the right direction. More importantly, it was validation that I was capable of standing on my own 2 feet. As I started to feel more stable, I allowed myself a few small luxuries. I upgraded my futon to an actual couch, bought a decent coffee maker, and even treated myself to a weekend trip out of town. Nothing crazy, just enough to remind myself that life wasn't just about work and survival. I was allowed to enjoy it too. By the end of that first year, I was in a completely different place, financially, emotionally, and mentally. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I was building a life that was entirely my own, free from Serafina's influence and control. Serafina and Kyle? Not so much. From what I heard, Kyle had drained Serafina's savings, maxed out her credit cards, and left her high and dry. She lost the house, the car, and pretty much everything she'd taken from me. Karma works fast sometimes, but honestly, I didn't care about them anymore. My focus was on myself and the life I was rebuilding. I wasn't rich or living some dream life, but I was happy, and that was more than enough for me. I'd learned that I didn't need Serafina, a fancy house, or a flashy car to feel successful. All I needed was my own drive and determination. The best part? I did it all without Serafina's drama or toxicity dragging me down. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life, and that feeling was worth every struggle I'd been through to get there. One Friday after work, I was running errands and stopped at a gas station to fill up my car. I was standing in line to pay for a soda when I noticed a bright display of lottery tickets next to the register. Normally, I wouldn't give those a second glance. I wasn't the kind of guy to waste money on long shots. But for whatever reason, I thought, why not? And grabbed a ticket. Just a quick pick, no real strategy. I stuffed it in my jacket pocket and didn't think about it again. The weekend came and went, and the ticket was all but forgotten. Life continued as usual. A few days later, I was scrolling through my phone while eating dinner and saw a headline about an unclaimed lottery jackpot. The winning ticket was sold at a gas station in my city. My heart skipped a beat. It was a ridiculous thought, a 1 in a million chance, but I felt a surge of adrenaline. I jumped up, rummaged through my jacket, and pulled out the crumpled ticket. I wasn't expecting anything. It was just a silly impulse buy, after all. But when I pulled up the numbers online and compared them, I nearly dropped my phone. Every single number matched. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the ticket and refreshing the website to make sure I wasn't seeing things. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like me. I mean, who actually wins the lottery? The next morning, I took the ticket to the lottery office to confirm it. They ran the numbers, scrutinized the ticket under a magnifying glass. And sure enough, it was real. I had won the jackpot. After taxes, I was looking at about $10 million. $10 million. My brain couldn't even process it. It was an obscene amount of money, enough to change my life forever. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to be that guy, the lottery winner who blows it all on stupid stuff and ends up broke in a year. I needed to be smart, strategic. I did some research and hired a financial advisor and an attorney before claiming the prize. They helped me set up a trust, which allowed me to claim the money anonymously. It was the best decision I could have made. Once the money hit my account, I sat down and made a plan. I didn't want to be one of those stories you hear about the lottery winner who loses everything because they went wild. My advisor helped me put the bulk of it into investments and high-yield accounts. I wasn't going to touch that money unless I absolutely needed to. It was security, a safety net for the future. I did allow myself a few upgrades, though. First, I moved out of my tiny apartment and bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, just a 3-bedroom place with a nice yard and plenty of space. It felt good to have a home that was mine, and mine alone. Next, I replaced my beat-up old sedan with a new, reliable car. Again, nothing flashy, just something comfortable and dependable that wouldn't break down on me at the worst possible moment. I also bought a few nice things for the house. After years of sleeping on secondhand furniture, it felt like a luxury. But that was it. No extravagant vacations, no designer clothes, no fancy watches. I didn't need any of that. What I needed was peace of mind. And for the first time in years, I had it. The lottery had given me the freedom to live my life on my own terms, without the constant stress and anxiety about money. The weirdest part about winning the lottery wasn't the money itself. It was the freedom that came with it. I didn't have to stress about bills or work overtime just to get by. I could breathe. That kind of security is something I hadn't felt in a long time, and it completely changed my perspective. I also decided to give back in small ways. I donated to a few local charities and helped out some friends who were struggling. Nothing that would put a dent in my savings, but enough to make a difference in their lives. It felt good to share my good fortune without making a big show of it. For the most part, I kept my win under wraps. I told my best friend Mark because I trusted him completely, but I didn't even tell my extended family. People act weird when they find out you have money, and I wasn't about to invite that kind of chaos into my life. Life after the win was quiet and simple, just the way I liked it. I still worked part-time as a consultant, mostly because I enjoyed it and wanted to keep busy. I spent my free time fixing up my house, going to the gym, and enjoying my newfound stability. Winning the lottery didn't make me a different person. It didn't solve all my problems or magically make my life perfect, but it gave me the chance to start over on my own terms. And for that, I was grateful. Little did I know, my past wasn't quite as far behind me as I thought. Serafina had a way of resurfacing when you least expected it. Let me tell you, nothing ruins a perfectly good afternoon like seeing your cheating ex-wife standing in your driveway, leaning against a rental car like she owns the damn place. I almost didn't recognize her at first. It had been over a year since I'd last seen Serafina, and life hadn't been kind to her. The carefully curated image she had always projected was gone. She looked tired, haggard, and like she was trying to fake the confidence she used to wear so effortlessly. The expensive clothes were replaced with something cheap and ill-fitting. This wasn't the first time I'd heard from her recently. A couple of weeks before, she'd sent me a random Facebook message. Just a simple, "Hey Liam, how have you been?" I didn't even bother to respond. After everything she put me through, the last thing I wanted was to open that door again. Then came the calls. Unknown numbers ringing at odd hours. I ignored them all, figuring it was probably her. Serafina doesn't give up easily, especially when she thinks there's something to gain. Turns out I was right. So there she was, uninvited and unwelcome, flashing me a practiced smile like we were old friends catching up. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. I opened the door just far enough to step outside and block her view of the house. "Serafina, what do you want?" She tilted her head, trying to act casual, but I could see right through it. "Can't I just stop by to catch up?" "It's been so long, Liam," I crossed my arms. "We don't have anything to catch up on. Say what you came to say and leave." She sighed, dropping the act almost immediately. "Fine. I heard you've been doing well for yourself. Rumor has it you hit the lottery." There it was. I don't know how she found out. Probably through mutual acquaintances or social media whispers, but the moment she said it, I knew exactly why she was there. Serafina didn't just show up for nostalgia. She smelled money, and she wanted a piece of it. "Even if that's true," I said, keeping my tone as even as possible, "it has nothing to do with you. We're divorced, remember?" She shrugged, like it was no big deal. "I'm just saying, Liam, we were married for years. Don't you think I'm entitled to something? After all, I supported you through so much." I almost laughed. "Supported me?" Serafina had taken half of everything I had, including the house and car, then ran off to play house with Kyle. Now she wanted to claim she had supported me, but I wasn't about to waste my energy arguing with her. "You're not entitled to a thing," I said. "Whatever I have now, I earned after the divorce. You got what you wanted back then. Don't push your luck." Her smile faltered, and for a moment, I thought she might back down. But this was Serafina we're talking about. She doesn't quit until she's either gotten her way or made a total fool of herself. "Well, I think we should talk about it," she said, stepping closer. "Maybe over dinner or coffee. We could figure something out that works for both of us." I shook my head. "There's nothing to figure out. You should leave." Her expression hardened, and she dropped the fake friendly act altogether. The claws came out. "I'm not leaving, Liam. Not until we've sorted this out." That's when I realized she wasn't just fishing, she was planning something. Serafina wasn't the type to show her cards, unless she thought she had a winning hand. I didn't know what her angle was yet, but I wasn't about to let her worm her way back into my life. "Leave now, or I'm calling the cops," I said firmly. She scoffed. "Fine, but this isn't over." She got into her rental car and drove off, but I knew she'd be back. Serafina didn't know when to quit, especially when she thought there was something in it for her. Sure enough, over the next few days, she bombarded me with texts and emails. She tried every tactic in the book: guilt, nostalgia, flattery. One text even said, "I was there for you when you were nothing. Don't you think you owe me something?" I ignored every single message. Blocking her number didn't help either. She just switched to emailing me instead. I started saving everything she sent, just in case. Then came the second unannounced visit. This time, she didn't even bother pretending to be nice. She showed up on my porch and demanded to talk. "I'm serious, Liam," she said, her voice tight with anger. "We need to settle this. If you don't want to do it the easy way, I'll have to take legal action." I raised an eyebrow. "Legal action? On what grounds? We've been divorced for over a year now." "Serafina, you've got nothing," she smirked. "Oh, I think I do. There are laws about assets acquired during marriage, you know. If you bought that lottery ticket while we were still married, I'm entitled to half." Her logic was as flawed as her sense of entitlement. I knew that the timeline was clear, that I had purchased and claimed the ticket well after the divorce was finalized. But Serafina didn't care about the truth or the law. She cared about what she could get. And if she thought she had a shot at grabbing even a sliver of my winnings, she wasn't going to stop. I wasn't about to let her see me sweat. "Good luck with that," I said, shutting the door in her face. I spent the rest of the day fuming. Serafina didn't care about the truth or the law. She cared about what she could get. And if she thought she had a shot at grabbing even a sliver of my winnings, she wasn't going to stop. That's when I decided to call my attorney, Amanda. I explained the situation, and she assured me that Serafina didn't have a leg to stand on. "The timeline is clear," Amanda said. "You bought and claimed the ticket well after the divorce was finalized. She can try to make a case, but it won't hold up." Still, I knew Serafina. She wasn't rational, and she didn't back down easily. I told Amanda to start preparing just in case. A few days later, I got served with court papers. It was ridiculous, but it was exactly the kind of stunt I'd expected from her. As frustrating as it was, I wasn't worried. I had Amanda on my side, and we had the facts to prove Serafina's claim was baseless. But that didn't mean it wasn't going to be a fight. Serafina was determined to make my life as difficult as possible, and I wasn't about to let her win. The battle was just getting started. If Serafina thought she could bully me into giving her a dime, she was in for a rude awakening. Walking into a courthouse to face your ex in a legal battle is a surreal experience. It's like being back in the worst parts of your life, but with everyone watching. The air is thick with tension, and the weight of the situation presses down on you. The day of the hearing, I showed up early with my lawyer, Amanda. She was calm and collected as usual and reassured me we had nothing to worry about. I tried to project the same confidence, but inside, my stomach was churning. Serafina, on the other hand, strolled in like she was auditioning for some kind of reality show. She was all dolled up, wearing heels that echoed through the hallway, and had this smug look on her face like she'd already won. Her lawyer was right behind her, flipping through a folder full of what I assumed was a pile of nonsense they'd cooked up. The courtroom itself was smaller than I expected. It wasn't like the dramatic scenes you see on TV, just a judge, a court reporter, and a handful of observers. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sterile glow on everything. Serafina sat on one side of the room with her lawyer, and I sat on the other with Amanda. The distance between us felt vast, a symbol of the chasm that had grown between us. The judge opened by reviewing the basics of the case. Serafina's claim was that my lottery winnings were marital assets I had hidden during the divorce. Her lawyer argued that I had intentionally concealed the ticket, depriving her of what she was legally entitled to. It was a blatant lie, but they were sticking to it. When it was Amanda's turn to respond, she started dismantling their argument piece by piece. She explained that the ticket had been purchased and claimed after the divorce was finalized. She handed the judge official documentation from the Lottery Commission showing the exact dates. Then, Amanda brought out the big guns, my financial records. She showed the court how the deposit from the lottery winnings occurred well after the divorce and was completely separate from any joint accounts Serafina and I had during our marriage. The judge nodded, taking it all in, but I could tell Serafina's lawyer wasn't going to give up that easily. Next, Serafina herself took the stand. She gave this tearful speech about how hard our marriage had been for her, how much she'd sacrificed, and how she felt betrayed when she found out about the winnings. It was pure theatrics, designed to sway the judge's emotions. At one point, she even said, "I trusted him, and he kept this secret from me." I don't think I'll ever recover from that kind of deception. Recover from what? She wasn't recovering from me. She was recovering from Kyle draining her dry. But of course, she didn't bring that up. When Amanda cross-examined her, things got interesting. Amanda started by confirming the timeline. "Serafina, your divorce from Liam was finalized on this date, correct?" Serafina nodded. "And you've seen the documentation showing that the ticket was purchased after that date, haven't you?" Serafina tried to hedge, saying, "I don't know when he bought it. For all I know, he could have bought it while we were still married and just waited to claim it." Amanda didn't miss a beat. "Are you suggesting the Lottery Commission would falsify their records to align with Liam's timeline?" Serafina stammered, clearly caught off guard. I'm not saying that, but what?" Amanda pressed. "The evidence is clear. You've seen it yourself. There is no overlap between your marriage and the lottery winnings. Isn't that correct?" Serafina had no choice but to admit it. "Yes," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Amanda didn't stop there. She pointed out how Serafina had received a significant settlement in the divorce, including the house, the car, and a portion of my savings. "You've already benefited financially from the divorce, haven't you?" Serafina tried to play the victim again, claiming she'd been forced to use that money to survive after the divorce. Amanda didn't bite. "So you're asking this court to award you additional money despite having no legal claim to it, simply because you spent through your settlement?" The courtroom was silent. Even Serafina's lawyer looked like he was regretting taking her case. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short and to the point. I told the judge about the timing of the ticket purchase and how I'd gone through all the proper channels to claim the winnings. I explained how I'd tried to move on with my life after the divorce and how Serafina had shown up out of nowhere, demanding money she had no right to. The judge listened carefully, then asked both sides if they had any final arguments. Serafina's lawyer gave some half-hearted speech about marital contributions and moral obligations, but it was clear he didn't have much to work with. He knew his case was dead in the water. When the judge finally delivered his decision, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. He dismissed Serafina's case as baseless and warned her against filing frivolous lawsuits in the future. He even went as far as to reprimand her lawyer for bringing such a weak case to court. Serafina looked furious. Her face turned red, and she clenched her jaw so hard I thought she might break a tooth. I half expected her to start screaming right there in the courtroom, but she held it together, barely. The whole ordeal had been stressful and unnecessary, but in the end, justice was served. Serafina had tried to take something that didn't belong to her, and she'd been shut down in the most public way possible. It was a victory, but I knew Serafina wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully. You'd think after losing in court, Serafina would have gotten the message, slunk away with her tail between her legs. But no. Serafina, being Serafina, decided she wasn't going down without a fight. As soon as the ruling was announced and we stepped outside the courthouse, there she was, waiting for me in the parking lot. The rental car was running, as if she were ready for a quick getaway. "You'll regret this, Liam," she screamed, her face red with fury. "You think this is over? I'll ruin you." I didn't respond. Not a word. I just looked at her, shrugged, and walked to my car. Engaging with her wouldn't have done anything but feed into her tantrum. Besides, I had bigger plans that were already forming in my mind. Here's the thing about Serafina, she's predictable. She thrives on chaos and thinks she's smarter than everyone else. But the truth is, she's not nearly as clever as she thinks. Her arrogance is her greatest weakness. I knew she wasn't going to let this go, and I decided it was time to teach her a lesson she'd never forget, a lesson that would resonate far beyond the courtroom. This wasn't just about the lottery money anymore. It was about putting an end to her manipulative behavior once and for all. Over the next week, I started planting seeds through a few mutual acquaintances, carefully selected individuals known for their loose lips and Serafina's tendency to pry. I casually let slip that I was looking into a high-profile real estate investment, a luxury condo project that was supposed to be the next big thing in the city. I hinted at potentially huge returns and mentioned that I was seeking partners. Of course, there was no such project. It was a complete fabrication, a meticulously crafted lie that Amanda and I cooked up specifically to bait Serafina. The details were vague, the promises tantalizing, the opportunity too good to pass up for someone as greedy as her. Predictably, word got back to her. It didn't take long for her to reach out through one of the same mutual contacts, claiming she might be interested in partnering with me on this imaginary deal. She played it off like she was doing me a favor, saying she had connections in real estate and could help make it happen. I let her think she was pulling the strings, that she was outsmarting me. I played the eager investor, telling her I was intrigued and that I'd set up a meeting with the project's developers. What Serafina didn't know was that the developers were actually Amanda and one of her legal colleagues, expertly posing as polished real estate executives. At the meeting, Serafina came dressed to impress, radiating a false confidence that was almost comical. She launched into a practiced pitch, tossing around all the right buzzwords: ROI, equity stakes, market trends. It was clear she was trying to convince us she knew what she was talking about, that she was a savvy investor worthy of our trust. She even brought financial documents to prove she could back the investment: bank statements, letters of credit, asset portfolios. It was all carefully crafted, designed to create an illusion of wealth and competence. This was exactly what we were waiting for. Amanda and her colleague played along flawlessly, asking probing questions, feigning interest, and pretending to be impressed by Serafina's credentials. They subtly steered the conversation, encouraging her to elaborate on her supposed expertise and financial capabilities. Meanwhile, I sat back and let her dig herself deeper and deeper into the hole. I watched her spin her web of lies, carefully documenting every detail, knowing that each word, each fabricated document was adding another nail to her coffin. By the end of the meeting, Serafina was practically glowing with confidence. She probably thought she'd pulled one over on us, that she was about to secure a slice of this made-up real estate pie. She had no idea what was coming. After the meeting, Amanda and I reviewed the documents Serafina had provided. They were laughably bad. Poorly doctored bank statements, forged letters of credit with misspelled names, and a bunch of made-up nonsense about her assets. It was fraud, plain and simple. We took everything to the authorities, specifically the district attorney's office. They were more than happy to get involved. Fraud cases like this are their bread and butter, and Serafina had handed them all the evidence they needed on a silver platter. They saw it as an easy win and a chance to make an example of someone trying to game the system. Weeks passed, and the wheels of justice began to turn. I continued to play my part, keeping Serafina on the hook, answering her calls and even attending a few more meetings where she continued to flaunt her fraudulent credentials. She was completely oblivious to the trap that was closing around her. Then it happened. A few weeks later, Serafina was arrested. From what I heard, she was completely blindsided. She had no idea the investment opportunity was a sting operation until the handcuffs were on her wrists. The officers arrived at her apartment early in the morning, catching her completely off guard. The fallout was spectacular. The arrest made the local news, and Serafina's name was dragged through the mud. She was charged with fraud, forgery, and a handful of other related crimes. Her fake financials and her attempt to manipulate her way into the deal made her case airtight. The prosecution had a field day. Her lawyer tried to argue that she'd been misled or tricked, that she didn't understand the complexities of real estate investment. But the evidence was overwhelming and the court wasn't buying it. The judge didn't go easy on her either. Serafina was slapped with hefty fines, a lengthy probation period, and mandatory community service. The sentence was a clear message. You can't try to con your way to success and get away with it. But the real punishment was the destruction of her reputation. Word spread fast, and soon everyone in her social circle knew what had happened. She went from pretending to be a savvy investor to being the punchline of every joke. Her carefully constructed image of success and sophistication crumbled, leaving her exposed and humiliated. I can't lie. It was satisfying to watch her fall apart. After years of her manipulating, lying, and scheming, she'd finally been caught and held accountable for her actions. It wasn't just about the money or the fake investment. It was about showing her that she couldn't keep walking all over people without consequences. For me, it was the perfect revenge. I didn't have to scream or fight or sink to her level. I just let her own greed and arrogance do the work for me. She thought she could outsmart me, but in the end, she only outsmarted herself. After the case wrapped up, Serafina tried to reach out to me one last time. She sent me an email, long, rambling, and full of excuses. She blamed everyone but herself, claimed she'd been pushed into a corner and didn't have a choice. She even had the nerve to ask if I could help her out financially, just until things settled down. I deleted the email without responding. I didn't need to. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I had no sympathy for her, no desire to offer her a lifeline. She had burned her bridges and destroyed her own life, and that was entirely her responsibility. The whole ordeal taught me a lot, not just about Serafina, but about myself. I realized that walking away from someone like her was the best decision I ever made. Winning the lottery was great, sure, but the real prize was being free of her toxicity and knowing I'd come out on top, no matter how hard she tried to drag me down. Serafina thought she could ruin me, but all she did was ruin herself. And honestly, I'm good with that. I closed the book on that chapter of my life, knowing that I had finally escaped the cycle of manipulation and deceit. I was free to move on, to build a life based on honesty, integrity, and genuine connections. And I wouldn't let anyone, especially not Serafina, ever take that away from me again. I spent the following months focusing on myself, on building a life that was meaningful and fulfilling. I continued to work part-time, enjoying the sense of purpose it gave me, and I devoted more time to my hobbies and interests. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and started exploring new possibilities. The lottery money provided a sense of security and freedom that allowed me to pursue my passions without the constant worry about financial constraints. I started taking classes in photography, something I'd always wanted to do, and discovered a hidden talent for capturing the beauty of the world around me. I traveled to places I'd only dreamed of, experiencing different cultures and broadening my horizons. I also started volunteering at a local animal shelter, spending time with abandoned and neglected animals. Their unconditional love and unwavering loyalty brought a sense of peace and purpose to my life. Slowly but surely, I healed from the wounds of the past. The bitterness and resentment that had consumed me after the divorce began to fade, replaced by a sense of gratitude and hope. I realized that Serafina's betrayal, as painful as it had been, had ultimately made me stronger and more resilient. It had taught me to value myself, to trust my instincts, and to never compromise my own happiness for the sake of someone else. One evening, while attending a photography exhibit, I met a woman named Olivia. She was kind, intelligent, and had a passion for life that was infectious. We struck up a conversation about the artwork, and I was immediately drawn to her warmth and genuine spirit. Over the next few weeks, we spent more and more time together, discovering shared interests and a deep connection. Olivia was unlike anyone I'd ever met. She was honest, compassionate, and supportive. She saw me for who I was, flaws and all, and accepted me unconditionally. With Olivia, I felt safe, loved, and truly seen. I knew that I had finally found someone who valued me for me, not for what I had or what I could offer. It was a stark contrast to my relationship with Serafina, which had always been transactional and based on superficiality. As our relationship deepened, I realized that I was ready to open my heart again, to trust again, to love again. Olivia had shown me that it was possible to move on from the past and create a new future filled with happiness and fulfillment. One sunny afternoon, while hiking in the mountains, I proposed to Olivia. Her eyes filled with tears of joy as she said yes. It was the happiest moment of my life. We were married a few months later in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was a celebration of love, hope, and new beginnings. As I looked into Olivia's eyes, I knew that I had finally found my forever partner, someone who would stand by my side through thick and thin, someone who would always cherish and support me. Looking back on my journey, I realized that everything had happened for a reason. The pain and heartache of the divorce, the struggle to rebuild my life, the unexpected lottery win, and the ultimate betrayal by Serafina, all of it had led me to this moment, to this place of peace, happiness, and love. I had learned that life is full of unexpected twists and turns, but that it's how you respond to those challenges that defines you. I had learned that true wealth is not measured in dollars and cents, but in the love, relationships, and experiences that fill your life. And most importantly, I had learned that even after the darkest of storms, there is always sunshine waiting on the other side. As for Serafina, I never heard from her again. I can only imagine the path her life took, consumed by her own greed and self-destruction. But I no longer cared. I had moved on, healed, and found a love that was real, lasting, and worth fighting for. My story is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of self-worth, and the unwavering belief that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to find happiness and create a life that is truly your own. And sometimes, just sometimes, karma delivers exactly what's due. And in Serafina's case, it was a debt long overdue. Years passed. Olivia and I built a beautiful life together. We traveled the world, pursued our passions, and filled our home with laughter and love. The memories of Serafina, once a source of pain and anger, became distant echoes, fading with each passing year. One day, I received a letter. It was handwritten, on cheap, lined paper, the kind you find in a dollar store notebook. The return address was a small, nondescript town I'd never heard of. Curiosity piqued, I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible, but I recognized it instantly. It was Serafina. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me, surprise, disgust, a faint flicker of morbid curiosity. I hadn't thought of her in years, and now, out of the blue, she was back. The letter was a rambling, incoherent mess. She wrote about her struggles, her regrets, her loneliness. She claimed to have turned her life around, to have found religion, and to have finally realized the error of her ways. She apologized for everything she had done, for the pain she had caused me, for the lies she had told. She begged for forgiveness, not for her sake, she claimed, but for her own peace of mind. As I read her words, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, no satisfaction, just a profound sense of indifference. Her words felt hollow, insincere, like another attempt to manipulate me, to elicit some kind of reaction. At the end of the letter, she made a request. She asked if I would be willing to meet her, just once, to talk, to make amends. She said she knew she didn't deserve it, but she had to try. I stared at the letter for a long time, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to throw it away and pretend it never existed. Another part of me wondered if there was some small chance that she was sincere, that she had truly changed. But in the end, I knew what I had to do. I wrote her a short, concise letter. I acknowledged that I had received her message and that I appreciated her apology, but I also made it clear that I had moved on with my life, that I had found happiness and peace, and that I had no desire to revisit the past. I wished her well in her journey and politely declined her request to meet. I sealed the letter, addressed it, and dropped it in the mailbox. As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure. I had finally put the past behind me, and I was ready to embrace the future without any lingering baggage. Serafina was no longer a part of my life, and I was determined to keep it that way. I returned home to Olivia, to our beautiful life together, filled with love, laughter, and genuine connection. I knew that I had made the right decision, that I had chosen happiness over bitterness, forgiveness over resentment. And as I held Olivia close, I realized that the greatest revenge of all is to live a good life, to find joy in the present, and to create a future that is filled with love, peace, and fulfillment. Serafina may have tried to destroy me, but she ultimately failed. I had risen above her negativity, healed from her betrayal, and built a life that was stronger, richer, and more meaningful than anything she could ever imagine. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. My story became one of triumphant resilience, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the transformative magic of finding true love after enduring profound heartbreak. It was a story I could finally tell, not with anger or bitterness, but with a quiet sense of gratitude and hard-won peace. And that, more than any lottery win or act of revenge, was the most satisfying victory of all.